This is the preface of Bhagavad-gītā. I'll just start out. Originally, I wrote Bhagavad-gītā as it is in the form in which it is now presented now. When this book was first published, the original manuscript was unfortunately cut short to less than 400 pages without illustrations and without explanations for most of the original verses of Srimad Bhagavad-gītā. In all of my other books, Srimad Bhagavatam, Śikṣāṣtaka, etc., the system is that I give the original verse, its English transliteration, word for word, Sanskrit English equivalents, translations, and purports. This makes the book very authentic and scholarly and makes the meaning self-evident. I was not very happy, therefore, when I had to minimize my original manuscript. But later on, when demand for Bhagavad-gītā as it is considerably increased, I was requested by many scholars and devotees to present the book in its original form. Thus, the present attempt is to offer the original manuscript of this great book of knowledge with full parampara explanation in order to establish the Krishna consciousness movement more soundly and progressively. Now you can see the screen share, right, Mike?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
Our Krishna consciousness movement is genuine, historically authorized, natural, and transcendental due to its being based on Bhagavad-gītā as it is. It is gradually becoming the most popular movement in the entire world, especially amongst the younger generation. It is becoming more and more interesting to the older generation also. Older gentlemen are becoming interested, so much so that the fathers and grandfathers of my disciples are encouraging us by becoming life members of our great society, the International Society. In Los Angeles, many fathers and mothers used to see me to express feelings of gratitude for my leading the Krishna consciousness movement throughout the entire world. Some of them said that it is greatly fortunate for the Americans that I have started the Krishna consciousness movement in America. But actually, the original father of this movement is Lord Krishna himself, since it was started a very long time ago, but is coming down to human society by disciplic succession. If I have any credit in this connection, it does not belong to me personally, but it is due to my eternal spiritual master, His Divine Grace Om Vishnupad Parahamsa Parivrajacharya 108 Sri Srimad Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada.
If I personally have any credit in this matter, it is only that I have tried to present Bhagavad-gītā as it is, without any adulteration. Before my presentation of Bhagavad-gītā as it is, almost all the English editions of Bhagavad-gītā were introduced to fulfill someone's personal ambition. But our attempt in presenting Bhagavad-gītā as it is to present the mission of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. Our business is to present the will of Krishna, not that of any mundane speculator like the politician, philosopher, or scientist, for they have very little knowledge of Krishna despite their other knowledge. When Krishna says, Man mana bhava mad bhakta madhyaji mam namaskaru, etc., we, unlike the so-called scholars, do not say Krishna and his inner spirit are different. Krishna is absolute, and there is no difference between Krishna's name, Krishna's form, Krishna's qualities, Krishna's pastimes, etc. This absolute position of Krishna is difficult to understand for any person who is not a devotee of Krishna in the system of parampara disciplic succession. Generally, the so-called scholars, politicians, philosophers, and swamis, without perfect knowledge of Krishna, try to banish or kill Krishna when writing commentary on Bhagavad-gītā. Such unauthorized commentary on Bhagavad-gītā is known as Mayavad Bhāsya, and Lord Chaitanya has warned us about these unauthorized men. Lord Chaitanya clearly says that anyone who tries to understand Bhagavad-gītā from the Mayavadi point of view will commit a great blunder. The result of such a blunder will be that the misguided student of Bhagavad-gītā will certainly be bewildered on the path of spiritual guidance and will not be able to go back home, back to Godhead.
Our only purpose is to present this Bhagavad-gītā as it is, in order to guide the conditioned student to the same purpose for which Krishna descends to this planet once in a day of Brahma, or every 8,600,000,000 years.
8 billion, actually.
Is it billion?
Yeah, it's
so yeah, 600 million. Okay. This purpose is stated in Bhagavad-gītā, and we have to accept it as it is. Otherwise, there is no point in trying to understand the Bhagavad-gītā and its speaker, Lord Krishna. Lord Krishna first spoke Bhagavad-gītā We have to accept this fact and thus understand the historical significance of Bhagavad-gītā without misinterpretation on the authority of Krishna. To interpret Bhagavad-gītā without any reference to the will of Krishna is the greatest offense. In order to save oneself from this offense, one has to understand the Lord as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as he was directly understood by Arjuna, Lord Krishna's first disciple. Such understanding of Bhagavad-gītā is really profitable and authorized for the welfare of human society in fulfilling the mission of life.
The Krishna consciousness movement is essential for human society, for it offers the highest perfection of life. How this is so is explained fully in Bhagavad-gītā. Unfortunately, mundane wranglers have taken advantage of Bhagavad-gītā to push forward their demonic propensities and mislead people regarding right understanding of the simple principles of life. Everyone should know how God or Krishna is great, and everyone should know the factual position of the living entities. Everyone should know that a living entity is eternally a servant, and unless one serves Krishna, one has to serve in different varieties of illusion, in different varieties of the three modes of material nature, and thus wander perpetually within the cycle of birth and death. Even the so-called liberated Mayavadi speculator has to undergo this process. This knowledge constitutes a great science, and each and every living being has to hear it for his own interest.
People in general, especially in this age of Kali, are enamored by the external energy of Krishna, and they wrongly think that by advancement of material comforts, every man will be happy. They have no knowledge that the material or external nature is very strong, for everyone is strongly bound by the stringent laws of material nature. A living entity is happily the part and parcel of the Lord, and thus his natural function is to render immediate service to the Lord. By the spell of illusion, one tries to be happy by serving his personal sense gratification in different forms, which will never make him happy. Instead of satisfying his own personal material senses, he has to satisfy the senses of the Lord. That is the highest perfection of life. The Lord wants this, and he demands it. One has to understand this central point of Bhagavad-gītā. Our Krishna consciousness movement is teaching the whole world this central point. And because we are not polluting the theme of Bhagavad-gītā as it is, anyone seriously interested in deriving benefit by studying the Bhagavad-gītā must take help from the Krishna consciousness movement for practical understanding of Bhagavad-gītā under the direct guidance of the Lord. We hope, therefore, that people will derive the greatest benefit by studying Bhagavad-gītā as it is, as we have presented it here. And if even one man becomes a pure devotee of the Lord, we shall consider our attempt a success.
Jai. You know, I love that part where he says, instead of satisfying his own personal and material senses, he has to satisfy the senses of the Lord. That is the highest perfection of life. The Lord wants this, and he demands it. He demands it. I have my front in Pennsylvania. Where do you live? You live in Pittsburgh, right?
Yes.
In Pennsylvania, you have the front license plate free. You can use that. So I have a license plate that I printed out. It says, it's like one of those English things that they had in World War II. It says, it's got a picture of a crown, and then it says, shut up and obey God. But it's in reverse, you know, it's in a mirror image so that people in front of me can see it. And some people thought that's pretty harsh, but actually that's the central point of Bhagavad-gītā, is just surrender to Krishna. As far as the conclusion of Bhagavad-gītā is concerned, that is the conclusion of this whole book, is to actually surrender to Krishna and obey his will and serve his senses instead of our own. So in order to, I mean, it sounds like kind of harsh for some people. It sounds like a fascistic comment or something, that you just want to control people, or God wants it. But he's not doing it for himself. He's doing it for us. He's asking us to surrender to him in order to purify us from our material attachment to this material world that's based on our false ego. We're controlled by our mind and our senses, and all these things are interacting with the illusory material nature. And so everything that we're seeing and interacting with is actually an illusion. And if we want to understand God, we have to surrender to him. And when he's pleased, he'll reveal himself to us. So that's the bottom line. And I was just thinking today that, that everything that Krishna is called achintya. Do you know what that word means, Mike? Achintya means inconceivable. In other words, he can't be understood by the body, mind, or sense or anything. So achintya, since he is achintya, and he can only reveal himself to one who is actually surrendered, and he chooses to reveal himself to that person. The only way, that is the reality. Krishna is everything. And so when Krishna reveals himself to us, then we're understanding reality. Otherwise, everything we're doing in this material world is pretty much a dream. It's actually all illusion. And so the real thing is Krishna. And so if he can't be perceived, the only way he can be perceived is through this disciplic succession, the parampara system coming from Krishna himself through a disciplic succession. If the only way he can be perceived is through that system, then why are we trying to figure out anything else on our own? Why are we even speculating? Why are we using any of our intelligence or mind to try to figure anything out? It's just mental speculation. That's why pure devotional service is defined as anya balasita sunyam jnana karmadi anavritam, which means the no fruit of activity and no mental speculation. It's just simply coming from Krishna, because everything else is pretty much fruitless. You can't understand Krishna by your own material mind or senses. Krishna has to reveal it. And so I'm just saying that, like, it kind of had that realization today that everything else that we see and hear, I'm reading the 11th canto of the Bhagavatam now, in the chapter is called Jnana Yoga. And that's a really excellent chapter because it just points out pretty much that everything is pretty much, I'll show you the thing that I quoted here. Because reality is achintya, inconceivable, the material mind and intelligence, to the material mind and intelligence, why would one even try to engage one's teeny brain in trying to figure out anything? Just accept the knowledge as it's coming down from the spiritual world. Everything else is illusion. And in the purport to one of those verses, it says, he is realized only after ordinary words cease. In other words, because it's descending knowledge, it's not ascending knowledge. And I love this quote too. It says, we should not waste time like the foolish material scientists and philosophers who struggle to find their origin of the world by their insignificant mental speculation and word jugglery. Although one may discover some of the gross laws of material nature through material research, there is no hope of achieving the absolute truth by such petty endeavors. In other words, we can go on speculating for millions of years and fly at the speed of the mind, but we'll never understand what Krishna is or reach the spiritual world by that method. It's actually a descending process. It's not an ascending process. It's not by our own reason or argument or austerity or charity or anything. It's just based on the pleasure of Krishna. If he wants to reveal himself, he can. And it's not up to us, So and it just also reminds me of one thing that I read from a book that I read recently called Journey to Unknown India, or it was written by do you know who Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati is, Prabhupada's spiritual master? He actually initiated a German disciple who was his only Caucasian disciple back in the 1930s or something. He actually passed away in 1930, but this disciple was traveled to India, and he was imprisoned in in the mid 40s during the war, because India was taking the side of the Allies. And so India locked down everybody from Austria and Germany. And this one disciple of Bhaktisiddhanta, who looked exactly like him, was like a spitting image. He was in this prison camp, and he said to another Jewish German who wrote this book, he said, the first thing my guru ever said to me is that you take everything that you've known, that you've read, everything that you've discovered, everything that you've seen, everything, just put it in a big bag and drop it into the ocean, in the deepest part of the ocean, and then start anew. So that's just like so profound, because we have to have a clean slate, a blank slate, for us to understand what the Guru wants of us, so we can follow his instructions. So that is the way to understand everything we know. Just have to forget it, and even at every moment, we have to just let the Guru write on that blank slate. So that's what I got from that book, and that's what this kind of like reminded me of, because there is no way to understand Krishna but through his own grace. Do you have any comments or anything? I think you're freezing up a little bit, your mic.
I mean, one of the places stood out. Oh, am I? I'm sorry. How about now? Is it working?
It's working now.
Okay. Yeah, you were freezing up a moment ago as well. So it was in the I guess the third paragraph
that we were reading before.
Yeah, and it was talking about how it's the absolute position of Krishna is difficult to understand for any person who is not a devotee of Krishna in the system of parampara, disciplic succession.
Right.
And I think tying into what you were just saying about taking everything we know or think we know and having to kind of start anew is this idea that, like, I know for myself, it's very easy to read this and frame it within my own experiences, and to think that I then have a really good understanding of it, because I can take it, apply it to, this is like equation of life, and this makes perfect. And I don't necessarily think there's something at its heart wrong with that, but yet the idea is still there. Is like I'm doing the thinking, I'm doing the knowing, and I'm convinced that I've now had the right way of looking at this, rather than accepting kind of that position where I really don't know, and I'm in this situation to begin with from a lifetimes of unsuccessful choices.
Right.
So being open to that, and so I mean that's something that even just that idea of being in the disciplic succession, that's something that's been coming up a lot in the things that I've been reading lately, and
the importance of it's a very personal process. It's very personal. You have to be connected to the disciplic
and so like even with going with that, with the kind of the personal process, and even the almost the Krishna consciousness is presented, when one first starts, like there's no hard fast rules for chanting, like just come and take prasadam and feel the benefit and so forth. But then when you pointed out that that this is what Krishna demands, that there's like a certain place where there is this kind of gradual, like loving, inviting process, but you still have to get to that where the rubber meets the road, and there are some things that become absolutes.
Yeah. Prabhupada doesn't mince words right from the very beginning. He says, we're not polluting this thing. We're not watering it down. We're just presenting the way, what Krishna wants. That's why he calls this book as it is, as opposed to, what Dr. Ramakrishna says, that, Krishna is the unborn eternal within Krishna that you have to surrender to instead of Krishna himself. Prabhupada said that anybody who doesn't understand that Krishna and Krishna's body and Krishna's inner and outer personality are the same is the greatest fool in understanding what Bhagavad-gītā is. So we're connected. Have you ever thought about actually becoming connected to the disciplic succession and taking initiation? Have you looked at any gurus that you...
I mean, way back, I was considering Bhaktitirtha Swami.
Oh yeah, he's such a great soul.
Yeah, he was very instrumental when I first got
I'll
exposed
tell
to.
you a story about Bhakti Tirtha Swami. I took initiation in the 70s, and he was there in New Vrindavan back in the 80s. But the first taste that I saw him dancing once in a kirtan, and that was actually the first taste of any kind of ecstasy that I ever would have experienced, or a kind of like a blissful feeling just watching him dance. He always wore this really nice, kurta and dhoti, sannyas dhoti. Was always made out of silk. He was always very well dressed, and he was just dancing. And that was my first taste of Krishna conscious bliss, just watching him dance. And he was. But
the time I went to a Rath Yatra was out at Gita Nagari, and he was dancing out in front of the carts, and I was kind of shyly just moving along, and he just grabbed me and pulled me out, and just like just the the smile and the wild abandon.
Oh yeah.
It's
he had a beautiful smile. Yeah, Radhanath Swami had a program in New Vrindavan once. He told a pastime of how when he was passing away, and he was in Gita Nagari, and they closed down the Festival of Inspiration, and Radhanath Swami got in the car and drove to Gita Nagari, and all the devotees followed him because they thought he was going to leave his body soon, but he actually lasted, I think, for weeks after that, or even a month or two. But he was in so much pain. He was in a bathtub trying to ease his pain, and he was just writhing in pain. And Radhanath Swami was reading to him the Krishna book, and he was just all of a sudden in the middle of this reading, even though he was feeling so much pain, he looked up and he smiled at Radhanath Swami. And he said, I can't think of anything or anyone or anywhere I'd rather be than right here, right now, because this is actually, this is the epitome of my life, just and just to think that despite all that pain and stuff, that kind of like realization broke through, and he was able to communicate that with Radhanath Swami. It's just amazing that kind of that kind of like almost out of the body experience, that he was able to have that realization and Krishna broke through. So he was definitely a great soul, and he continues to be, of course, somewhere in the spiritual world. But continue your thought. Are you actually considering anything like that in the future? Or
yeah, I don't really have anyone in mind, because I've been doing this for a while, but I go to New Vrindavan for Sunday programs from time to time. Most of it though I do on my own. I chant regularly, I read, but I don't have a lot of association. So
yeah, where do you live in Pittsburgh?
Over in the north side.
North side, okay. Does that mean like above the Civic Arena, the old the PNC, or whatever you call it now?
Yeah, I'm a couple minute walk from over where the baseball and football stadiums are.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So, well, we always have these books, and the books are association. I look at it like it's like a 24/7 self-help book, or like actually communicating with Krishna. You just open up the Bhagavad-gītā, and there he is right on the page. He's the best friend, and he can talk to you anytime because he's there in the books. When I first checked out the Bhagavatam back in the 70s, I was coming home from the college university book, the library, and I was carrying these books in my arms, and I felt like I was actually carrying a presence. It was weird. It was amazing that I was feeling some kind of like presence in my arms, not just books. It was like something that was tangible that I felt, and so that's just another indication of that these things, the books are not ordinary. They're actually incarnations of Krishna, and they have to be treated with respect, even the book itself, But I guess we only have like about 8 minutes left here. But if you want to, we could just read the introduction, the Mangalacarana prayers here. Vaisheshika Prabhu, have you ever heard of him? He's a guru in ISKCON. He's from the West Coast, but he says these prayers every time before he gives class, and also a bunch of Bhagavad-gītā verses and a bunch of Chaitanya Charitamrita and Srimad Bhagavatam verses. And then he says, well, I might get around to to reading the actual verse that we're supposed to be talking about today, because it usually lasts for like 20 minutes before he gives class. But this is a really personal process, and so the Mangalacarana prayers, this introduction of Bhagavatam or Bhagavad-gītā, it just connects you with the disciplic succession. And so you must be pretty good at pronouncing Sanskrit by now, right? No?
Nope.
Krishna trains you up. If you actually practice, Krishna will train you up. But I'll do the Sanskrit, and you can read the translation. Omagyan Timanandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshuvan Minitam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayanda Dati Swapatandikam.
I was born in the darkest ignorance, and my spiritual master opened my eyes with the torch of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. When will Srila Rupa Goswami Prabhupada, who has established within this material world the mission to fulfill the desire of Lord Chaitanya, give me shelter under his lotus feet?
Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Tapada Kamalang Sri Gurun Vaishnavam Cha Sri Rupam Shagajatam Sagana Raganatam Vidam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Prijana Sitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Sri Vishakamatam Cha.
I offer my respectful obeisances under the lotus feet of my spiritual master and under the feet of all Vaishnavas. I offer my respectful obeisances under the lotus feet of Srila Rupa Goswami, along with his elder brother Sanatan Goswami, as well as Raghunath Das and Raghunath Bhatta, Gopala Bhatta, and Srila. My respectful obeisances to Lord Krishna Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda, along with Advaita Acharya, Gadadhar, Srivas, and other associates. I offer my respectful obeisances to Srimati Radharani and Sri Krishna, along with their associates, Sri Lalita and Vishaka.
Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate.
Oh, my dear Krishna, you are the friend of the distressed and the source of creation. You are the master of the gopis and the lover of Radharani. I offer my respectful obeisances unto you.
Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavanishware Vrishabhanu Suti Devi Pranamami Hari Priya.
I offer my respects to Radharani, whose bodily complexion is like molten gold and who is the queen of Vrindavan. You are the daughter of King Vishbhanu, and you are very dear to Lord Krishna.
Vansha Kalpa Turbascha Kripa Sindhabheva Cha Patidanam Pavanibhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha.
All the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord. They can fulfill the desires of everyone, just like desire trees, and they are full of compassion for the fallen souls.
Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Dvaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda.
I offer my obeisances to Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Sri Advaita, Gadadhar, Srivas, and all the others in the line of devotion.
Let's just chant together. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So it's almost time to quit here. I think this is good. I think it's an auspicious beginning. Just to start out like this, kind of rocky in the beginning. I apologize for not knowing my way around. I'm going to have to look at a few videos to figure out how to navigate so that I can let other people in. But anyway, you got in there, so I appreciate your presence, and thank you so much for your interest. And perhaps we'll see you at one of these upcoming kirtans at the center.
Yeah, I just haven't been comfortable yet with being in public spaces.
Right. Yeah. I would be more comfortable myself if they would actually have a vaccine mandate. I've got a lot of coinciding risks. I'm overweight. I'm old. I'm 66 years old. I'm going to get my booster shot in a few days, but I've got diabetes, type 2 diabetes. I've got high blood pressure. I'm overweight. So all these different things. I don't want any kind of like problems. Mm. And they do have masks. It's a mask mandate there, but they don't require vaccination. And I think anybody that goes there should be vaccinated. Otherwise, a lot of people I know weren't vaccinated and they weren't wearing a mask. And so I have a problem with that. So I actually created a WhatsApp group to try to help them become more strict, at least with the mask wearing. But because I'm just worried. I'm not worried too much about myself, but I'm worried that all these other people that aren't vaccinated are going to catch something. Because so that's what my concern is. Because I just I don't want to. Krishna wants to protect the devotees. So there's especially in Pittsburgh, I've kind of like taken it on myself for Pittsburgh to be my Prabhu Datta Desh. In other words, my wife said we're not moving. So, I always do what I want, but I have to ask my wife what it is that I want to do, So we had such a hard time moving from our apartment into this house that we have now. Did you find out about this through the Kirtan Center?
Up on, you posted it up on Facebook on the Kirtan Center's page.
Yeah. So well, thank you very much. And maybe we'll see you next Friday. That would be awesome. Okay. So thank you, Mike. I appreciate it.
Thank you for doing this.
Hare Krishna.